Well, howdy, howdy. You doing well today on a soggy Tuesday up here in the Northeast? Oh my goodness, it's been raining cats and dogs for 3 days. Not gonna complain. We have had a drought this summer, so the precipitation is welcome. But we're not doing a weather report. This is a housing market show. So welcome the Savvy Home Seller Market, Savvy Home Seller Housing Market Show. We talk about all things real estate, coast to coast, whatever's in the headlines this week. And you know what? This week we're talking about something that in this day and age, in this political climate, I said we're going to celebrate this thing. The Republicans and the Democrats have actually gotten together and had bipartisan approval on a bill in the Senate that flew through. And we're going to talk about it tonight. They agreed on something. Pigs are flying. You know what? It's craziness. It's craziness. I feel like the Ghostbusters saying that I can't remember what he said in, in the first Ghostbusters. Pigs are flying, whatever. But it is a big deal, potentially. So I want to dig into what the bill that got approved in the Senate still it's got a ways to go before anything takes traction. But I want to dig into exactly what it is, what the implications are, what does it mean. So we've got some stuff to dig into today. I'm excited to chat with you guys about this. But first, we got to do some housekeeping. The first thing I want you guys to point out is make sure you jump on the poll. I want to know what your thoughts are for what is the poll today? I'm a hot mess. I think the rain, I've been running around like a crazy woman today, and the rain, I think, has gotten to me. It just, I need some sunshine badly. In the current housing crisis, who deserves the first priority in housing policies? Chime in. If you're watching this during the live stream, you can vote. Unfortunately, if you're watching this on the replay, you cannot. But you know what? Maybe that's a small little reward for jumping in in that regard. Second, I want to know what your wins this week. Post your wins either in the chat during the live stream or in the comments. Let me know what's going on. Tell me, share with the community here all the good stuff that you were able to accomplish. Whether it be housing related or otherwise. Let's keep it PG, folks. Okay, it's a family show. Next, if you have a question, make sure you put QQQ before that question so I can make sure to see it in the chat, because I am a solo show here, so I want to make sure that I grab it, especially when you guys get hopping in conversation in the chat, which I love. But put QQQ before your questions. And as always, I'll put all the links to the articles that I'm going to talk about tonight in the description. It may not be right after the show, but I will get to it as quickly as I possibly can, if not tonight, tomorrow. So what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about the Road to Housing bill that passed the Senate, and kind of what we know about it and what it may or may not mean to the housing market. I found an article popped up today. Sounds kind of scary. Deflationary vortex. What the heck does that mean? Well, you know what? I found this article on Newsweek, and I want to dissect it and serve you guys up some data and facts to kind of squelch the drama. Save the drama for your mama. There's no room for it here. We're not talking drama. We're not talking about the skies falling and all the things. We're talking data. Because you know what? Numbers don't lie. And as you guys know, that is my default. It takes the emotion out of the equation. And finally, I got a couple questions. I got some community questions that popped up on after the live stream last week that I want to point out for a couple things that you guys asked about that I think is good content, good common questions that a lot of folks ask about that I don't necessarily have content that addresses, or maybe I want to elaborate on it. So we folks jump in the chat. Hey, Angie Madcat is always here. Good to see you at the top of the show, my friend, out in California. Good to see you. Maybe one of these days I'll actually meet you. That would be kind of nice. In any event, um, let's get this party started. I'm going to jump right in because I want to make sure we have time for all this stuff. So this is this broke yesterday. This article broke yesterday. It's a Realtor.com article, kind of covers this, and I like the Realtor.com approach. Is it probably is least dramatic as you can get. I don't care about articles that are geared one way or the other. I want to know that just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So bipartisan bill to tackle the housing crisis passes the Senate during the government shutdown. Yes, things are still happening. People are still working over there in the government, apparently. This is a bipartisan bill aimed at making housing more affordable, has passed the Senate in the middle of the federal government shutdown, and a sign that the urgency of the housing crisis is a rare issue that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to your wallet, but it's a big deal to the country. The Senate passed, and I'm going to actually get into that in a second and why I say that. The Senate passed the Road to Housing Act and a 77-20 vote on Friday as part of its version of the National Defense Authorization Act, a $924.7 billion defense spending bill for fiscal year 2026. It's a 315-page bill. I did not read it. Full disclosure. I'm relying on highlights. I unfortunately, I probably could have popped in a chat GPT. Didn't have a chance to do that, but we'll see how this thing plays out, whether we need to do that or not. It says that it passed out of the Senate Banking Committee with a unanimous 24-0 vote in July. And I actually mentioned this. This came up in July or thereabouts. I covered this article that this was something that was in the works. So it's having some traction. It says this landmark legislation, the first of its kind in more than a decade, takes important steps to boost the nation's housing supply, improve housing affordability, it's the biggest thing, and increase oversight and efficiency of federal regulators and housing programs. This is where it gets a little sticky. This is Warren and Scott said in a statement following the full Senate vote. It says now Tim Scott is a Republican, Elizabeth Warren is a Democrat. So nice to see people actually working for the betterment of the country instead of anyhow. The bill now needs House approval to reach the president's desk, but a vote has not been scheduled, and Speaker Mike Johnson has vowed the House will not return for votes until the Senate agrees on a spending bill to reopen the government. So stay tuned. So several industry groups, and I actually, when I was doing my research on this, there's a lot of support for this bill. A lot. Several industry groups have praised the bill, which includes a wide range of provisions designed to reduce red tape for new housing construction, incentivize communities to build more housing, and boost accountability for federal housing regulators. When I was doing my research, the National Association of Home Builders is in favor. The Mortgage Bankers Association is in favor. Habitat for Humanity wrote an article praising this bill. So there is a lot of consumer advocate agencies that consider this in the consumer's best interest. This is NAR. National Association of Realtors applauds the Senate for passing this bipartisan legislation that addresses housing supply, affordability, and homeownership pathways at a time when homeownership increasingly feels out of reach. And I hear about this stuff. You guys message me all the time about how frustrated you are. This legislation offers meaningful, pragmatic solutions to restore opportunity for millions of American families. We commend Chair Senator Tim Scott, Ranking Member Senator Elizabeth Warren for their bipartisan leadership on this critical issue. We look forward to working with Congress and the administration to enact this vital legislation and help preserve the American dream of ownership for future generations. Mortgage Bankers Association President CEO Bob Brooksmith says it's a win for housing affordability and consumers. And it says many of the provisions within the bipartisan measure are aimed to take meaningful steps to boost housing supply, cut red tape in federal program offerings, and expand access to affordable mortgage credit for families nationwide. What does that mean? Tell me more. I need to know, I'd like to know what exactly, it says expand access. What does that exactly mean? A portion of your mortgage interest is tax deductible. So what are, expanding access? So does that mean that they're going to be a higher percentage of tax deduction? You're going to be, depending on what your tax bracket is, that would be nice. Put more money back in your pocket, because a lot of folks don't know that when you have your housing payment, especially first-time home buyers, when you have your housing payment every month, and you're paying that mortgage payment, a portion for the first 7 years, you're paying more interest than you are towards the principal. And that interest payment is tax deductible on your tax return. When you file your taxes, they're going to ask you, the mortgage company issues you a statement. How much interest did you pay on your on mortgage interest? The INT, I don't remember what the numbers are, but the mortgage interest statement that you get every year, you put that into your tax return, and that reduces the amount of taxes you have to pay, which for a lot of folks that are getting a W-2, that means actual tax return money back into your pocket. If your tax return, your mortgage interest percentage is based, and you get a bigger break on that based on your income bracket, that makes it essentially more affordable. When I counsel first-time home buyers, one thing that I would tell them is that, when you're looking at your housing your monthly housing payment, of course, you have to do your budget. You have to make sure that you have, and this is first-time home buyers or any buyer, you have to make sure that you can afford it at this given time. Okay, you want to make sure that it doesn't matter what's going to happen in your future, if you have raises or whatnot. Make sure that you're comfortable with your budget now. However, when you go do your taxes, the first time your first experience in home ownership, when you go to do your taxes, come tax time, after 12 months have passed, you're going to see a little bit of a windfall. And my recommendation was always, if you get an extra $2 or $3 or $4,000 in tax return money, put that aside. Don't spend it. Don't go buy a TV, buy a sofa. No, you put that into a reserve account to reinvest in your home, because things break, furnaces and hot water heaters and appliances and all the things. And that's a great opportunity to fund your savings, because it is getting hard to do that on a regular basis. I digress. All right, we'll get back to the get off my little TED talk on mortgage interest credit. Let's see. It says, as the bill moves to the House, the Mortgage Bankers Association will stay fully engaged. Yada yada yada. Okay, notable provisions of the Road to Housing Act. It says one notable part of the bill, Section 203, calls for the Department of Housing and Urban Development to develop a best practices framework for local zoning and land use policies, which could be copied and implemented by local jurisdictions at their discretion. This is where it gets sticky. This is where it gets sticky. And I understand where they're going with this, because there are states some states more than others are very difficult to work with. California sticks out like a sore thumb, very hard. They've got a lot of policies with building, a lot of restrictions, a lot of chokeholds in a lot of communities that prohibit building, which creates more demand, which drives up prices. Here's the thing, the individual states, the government has to be careful that they don't overstep their bounds and require. That's why they're saying it could be copied and implemented. Now, how are they going to encourage this with local jurisdictions? Remain to be seen. It says this is significant because zoning rules vary widely among different jurisdictions, and overly restrictive zoning rules are often cited by builders as a key impediment to new housing construction. It says, at a minimum, having a national template for zoning laws would give pro-housing local politicians more ammunition. Whoops, what's going on with my, whoa. Oh, what's going on there? I got a little ghost in the machine here. I don't know why I did that. Sorry about that. This is at a minimum, having a national template for zoning laws would give pro-housing local politicians more ammunition to oppose cumbersome rules in their own jurisdictions by giving them federal guidelines to point to. So basically what they're talking about is if there are local advocates, your state reps that want to advocate for the consumer, for the public, and they go to the town hall meetings, they go to the local governments and say, listen, here's what the federal government, is suggesting. How can we how can we get, how can we follow their lead? How can we follow their recommendations to encourage them to do that, to help with these zoning laws? Now, there are two sides of the coin, and I'm not glossing this over, and this is not all roses and cherries. This isn't all great. This isn't all bulletproof. We'll talk about that in a second. But it says creating a set of standards for zoning could be helpful to bring attention to the issues facing many local markets. But the effectiveness of policy changes will ultimately come down to municipalities. Berner also highlights sections 207, 208 as potentially impactful as they call for cutting red tape around federal environmental review procedures and empowering states, local governments, and Indian tribes to streamline their own review procedures. I hear from being in the industry, I hear from builders, I hear from agents that work with directly, very closely with builders. Some of the federal environmental requirements and review procedures are requirements in the sense that uh, I had an electrician tell me not too long ago that in my town, in Plymouth, they're now requiring EV chargers in every single new construction. Why? I understand, like, I'm all for pro environment, but not everybody's going to be driving an electric vehicle, and all that does is jack up the cost of the house. The builders don't want to put it in. You can make it as an add-on, but why require it? Things like that. It's red tape that are making it more difficult for builders to build affordable housing. It says the big challenge for legislation like this is the decision-making bodies that determine housing policy are primarily local. So it's difficult to have top-down types of changes. In a nutshell, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is great. I really applaud them for trying to make a change and trying to affect change in this country. But it is going to come down to local. It is going to come down to communities deciding to fall in line or get on board or seeing the benefit and so on and so forth, because that is what that's what it's going to take. How can they do that? I don't see anything mentioned in here in terms of incentives. I know Hollywood, for example, being in Massachusetts, a lot of Hollywood movies, a lot of shows. The new Dexter, Resurrection show was filmed in Massachusetts. A lot, probably not all of it, but a good chunk of it. Why? Because of the tax credits. Made it more enticing for that industry to come to this area. And if that's that's just one example. If you want to encourage new construction, if you want encourage affordable new construction, then you've got to make it, got to give the communities a reason to jump on board. And I don't see anything in here, but this is still, well, it's in its infancy. This is just at the very beginning of the process. So, all right, I'm gonna jump in the chat here, see what's popping over here. All right. Uh, Here we go. So he says, human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. That's the Ghostbusters quote I was looking for. Thank you, Sandy. Yes, thank you. Croy West in the house. Hello. Tracy B in the house. Alyssa says, I've been in my new house in Palm Coast, Florida for 1 month. Listed my house. I sold June 6th and closed on it September 15th. Had to lower the price a lot, but I was able to pay cash for this house. Let's go. Nice job. Fantastic. You got it done. Love it, love it, love it. Guy Devarney says, win, thanks to 20% agent referral. Our home is under contract in 30 days compared to average 74 for our zip code. Woohoo! Let's go. I love it, love it, love it. I love it. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. That is fantastic. And who says nothing is happening in the real estate industry, in the real estate market? Wiggly arm guy. Let's see. Arizona's weather's finally starting to calm down. We're out of the hundreds finally. Good Lord. Yikes. Burr. Yeah, I had a new heating system installed last week. Kind of put my schedule a little sideways. Took two and a half days instead of a little over a day because of my house being 60 years old and there's always hiccups. And it was installed just in time because I've been using it. And it's if you're ever researching heating systems, the backpack units that you can hang on your wall are the most efficient at 94% efficiency. I went with a Will McLean, a cast iron boiler. It's a hybrid boiler. It's 92%. The life expectancy is twice that of the backpack boilers. And what I didn't realize is those backpack boilers require yearly maintenance. They require yearly maintenance. Your cast iron boiler does not. So a little titty for you there, a little tidbit for you. Let's see. D says my latest win. The sinkhole in my front yard, holy cow, is on the city side, not on my side. That's a huge win, which saves me thousands of dollars. The city replaced the sewer line and will repave the entire street. Yeehaw! I would say that that's a ginormous win. Holy cow. Good Lord. Imagine having a sinkhole in your front yard. How terrifying. Bleed Green 215 says I'm getting a new home closed on the 24th. Walk through this Friday. Should I get a home inspection? Realtor said not worth it. So are you asking if I'm getting a new home. Oh, okay. So you're buying a new home and you're wondering if you should get a home inspection. That's a tough question to answer. So if you're closing on the 24th, I always think a home inspection is a good investment. I mean, if you're spending, put it to you this way, you got to ask yourself how much you're spending on your house. How much does the home inspection cost? And what if something is found during that home inspection? I would do it. I would do it for your peace of mind. Because if you don't, the fact is that the fact that you're asking the question means that you're thinking about it. And if you're anything like me, once you're thinking about it, your brain's not going to let it go. And then when you close, it's too late. Once you close, that's it. There's no going back. But if your inspection does come up with something, then at least you can have some recourse. You can either delay the inspection, the closing. You can, not that you want that, but you can have the attorney write up addendums to protect you, to make sure the builder follows through, yada yada. I would do it. The realtor said it's not worth it. I would question their motives. Sounds to me like they just want to get the deal done. That's on the outside. I don't know anything about the transaction. I don't know anything about the builder. I don't know anything about the circumstance. But whenever an agent says don't get a home inspection, that's like saying don't open this door. Because why? Because I'm just telling you, don't open the door. Of course I want to open the door now. Like, I gotta know. Inquiring minds need to know. Like, don't tell me it's like a child. Don't touch this. What do you think's gonna happen? The kid's gonna touch it. Like, you know? Let's see. Okay, Cindy with the QQQ says, maybe they all should see your show a few weeks back, saying the three lawyers who are withholding lumber. Three Sawyers who are withholding lumber. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, Cindy. I'm not sure. I'm having a brain block. I'm not sure what you're what you're asking there. I apologize. Maybe you can throw a comment in and elaborate a little bit. Angie says that the new zoning laws need to make sense. I agree. I'm fighting a neighbor who wants to build a second 2,800 square foot home right next to my property line. What? Yeah, you know what they say, Angie, about common sense? It's not so common. And that is the truth. And the fact that a lot of, the propensity for tunnel vision and lack of consideration of those around you is running rampant in this world these days. It's not, people don't think about their neighbors. They're just like, what's good for me? But that's why the zoning laws are there, is to protect. I mean, why are any of these laws? Because we can't do it ourselves. Speed limits, if everybody would just, if they would drive safely, there'd be no speed limits. But of course, there's, free will. So that's why they have to put the laws in place. Sin says, uh, uh, open the door. Yes. Open the door indeed. Okay. So I have a copy of that article. I'm actually going to put the actual bill, a link to that National Defense Authorization Act, in the, if you're, up late at night and you want some light reading, I'll put that in there for you. But we'll see. I mean, I think that there's so many pieces of the puzzle that it's impossible to say how this is going to affect, or benefit. At the end of the day, the one thing that will help that won't solve the housing crisis. It will not, but a combination of all these things will impact the housing market. And if it impacts the housing market, then it will be a gradual softening, and eventually we'll get back to a more normal, more affordable. Is it ever going to go back to the way it was? Ship has sailed. But if we get to a point where at least we get to the average first-time home buyer, they bring that age down from 38 back into the late 20s, where where it was, to help some of these younger folks get their foot in the door, we'll be on the right track. Okay, deflationary vortex. Sounds super scary, but you know what? It's all drama. It's all drama. This is an article I picked up today from Newsweek, and I'm like, come on, what is going on here? So as I read it, I said, I understand I know what they're doing here. Okay, so it says the U.S. housing market is currently in a disinflation and deflationary vortex. Now, this is according to real estate analyst Nick Gurley. Nick Gurley's a YouTuber. He's a YouTuber. That's what he does. He's got an app, and yes, he has a lot of. He's not not a dummy. He knows his analytics. He is what we commonly refer to in the real estate realm as a crash bro. You know what a crash bro is? It's all those YouTube channels that every single week it's the same headline with a little twist about the market crashing and all the reasons why we're all going to hell in a handbasket. The market's going there. So it says, and I love reading articles like this because I love to poke holes in it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Not defend it. I'm going to defend the real estate industry at all, but I'm going to show you some data that kind of will make you think. It says home price growth on the national basis has slowed to basically flat year over year, and now home prices are declining in almost half the states in the U.S., is what he said in a recent video. Meanwhile, rent growth has slowed to its slowest level in 14 years, indicating that we are just seeing inventory pile up all across the housing market. In Gurley's opinion, the combination of these two factors could signal the precipice of a big decline, as he expects to see prices decreases continue next year. If you like this stuff, go for it. I personally don't like anything that sensationalizes unnecessarily and doesn't give you a clear picture. And let me show you why. So let's take a look at some data. Okay, first off, the housing price growth on the national basis has slowed to basically flat year over year. Now the home prices are declining. Okay, home prices are declining. Let's take a look at the median sale price. Median sale prices. This is since 1965. This is the St. Louis Federal Reserve. These are numbers. This is data. This is just data. It's cold hard data. We've got 1965 all the way up to current, and you can see all of these blips are going to be recessions. Some critical. This is going to be when the big great financial crisis happened. This is going to be COVID and the pandemic and the craziness that happened there. And you can see where it absolutely spiked. But what I want you to see, and why, I saw a comment on my channel earlier this week that talked about, this viewer's been trying to buy a house for over a decade and waiting for the prices to come back down. The prices will never come back down to where you think they should be. I am not saying this as a real estate agent. Just look at the data. Look at the data. This line continually grows since 1965. Blip, and then it recovers. Blip, and then it recovers. Blip, and then it recovers. What do you think is going to happen going forward? You will have a recovery. Will it come back down to where it was in 2020? It might. I don't think so. I think it's going to settle to a point because there's so much pent up demand. But demand does not disappear. Demand does not disappear. It's just pausing. A buyer that decides they want to buy a house doesn't turn around and say, I'm just going to live with my parents indefinitely forever. Or I'm not going to sell, even though I don't want stairs, even though the house is too big. Right now is not a good time. You know what? I'm never going to sell. I'm going to stay here forever. They're going to bury me in the backyard. Or the family that's having children that maybe wants to have more children, or maybe they took a pause for multiple reasons, and now they're like, you know what, financially we can do it, but we're not quite there yet. They're pausing. There are so many people that are pausing. Those people don't disappear. All they need is a reason to unpause, and it's happening slowly. This will happen. If all of a sudden we have a crash, guys, it's just common sense. If all of a sudden the prices crash, what do you think is going to happen to all those buyers that have pressed pause? A lot of them are going to come out of the woodwork. They're going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to buy. Why? Because the prices came down so drastically. We're going to see a continuing softening. Where it will end, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you one thing, based on the last 50, 60 years, all this data tells me it's not going to end up down here. It just won't. Data. The housing inventory. He referred to, this is the pricing, and then he talks about the number of homes for sale. It says there were over 2.1 million homes for sale in the U.S. housing market. And I'm not doing this article to bash the article. I'm doing this because I know this is what you guys are reading. And my goal is to provide education, so you guys go to advocate for yourself. I want to give you the data that I've researched that I'm aware of and share that with you so that when you read this article, you don't freak out, you don't stress out, you know where to turn so that you can see beyond the sensationalism and the drama. It says there were over 2.1 million homes for sale in the U.S. housing market in August, according to Redfin, up 10.5% from a year earlier. That sounds crazy scary. Oh my gosh, the inventory is piling up. It says in the same month, sales were down 2.2%, and homes were spending an average of 8 days longer on the market before going under contract. It says despite a slowdown in demand in sales, the median sale price of the typical home is still rising. In August, it was $439,000 and change, up 1.5% compared to a year earlier. But I want to get back to this data here. It sounds scary. The 2.1 million homes for sale in the U.S. housing market in August, up 10.5%. 100%. But let's look at housing inventory as a whole. So we've talked about, again, average. In this data set from the St. Louis Federal Reserve goes back to 2017. 2017, before the pandemic craziness, was still a seller's market, but a little bit more normalized. And we were up at 1.4 million. 1.4 million is a number that we have been talking about for years now as the goal to getting a more balanced market. Enough homes to satisfy the demand. Enough homes to satisfy demand means that prices will level out. There are states that is happening. All the states in Florida and Texas, all those states are, all that means is that inventory is meeting the demand, and now it's a more balanced playing field. It doesn't mean that the inventory's flooded. It's a big difference. This data shows it. 1.4 million back in July of 2016, and look where we are now. We're under 1.2. We're on it. We're on the way. But we're nowhere near close to where we need to be a more balanced market. So of course, when you see up 10%, it sounds crazy. It sounds, oh my gosh, the market is flooding. No, it's not flooding. We're just on our way to more balance between what's available and who is buying. Excuse me. There's a big difference. I want to jump over to the chat for a sec. Guys, I know that the ladies out there know what I'm talking about with this menopause stuff, when you just, for no reason whatsoever, just like choke on your own saliva. Do you ever get that? That drives me crazy. Just my side commentary. What's that all about? Inquiring minds want to know, because you know what? My friends we're all going through this stuff together, and we're like talking about it like, what the heck? I don't understand. This is a thing. I wasn't prepared for this. Yeah, let's see. Angie says building has stopped again, so that definitely won't make housing cheaper. That is correct. I think, and what I didn't see, and what I'd like to see some regulations in quality. Some of the videos I watch with the crap that is being built right now, it not all. There are some good home builders. There's great home builders out there. A lot of it's garbage. The stuff and that's what concerns me. It really, really concerns me that the incentivizing builders to build more, they are going to want to cut costs. They're going to cut costs because, I mean, who knows if the tariffs will continue. Tariffs are going to make it more expensive to build these homes because the cost of materials are going up. And that's a big question mark on whether that's a long-term thing, how long that's going to last. But if they start cutting costs, well, then what happens? Who pays for that? Well, the consumer ends up paying for it. Maybe they hire, tradesmen that are not as experienced. Maybe there's less oversight by the foreman. Maybe they're just trying to crank out as many of those stupid things as they possibly can without the proper quality control. That's when you get some of the scary stuff. I was watching a video last night that I'm like, just tear the thing down. Just bulldoze it, use it for firewood, start again. It makes me scared for home buyers that don't know any better, which is why you want to have a home inspection on new construction. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Angie. 110%. Little dramatic. Wiggly Arm Guy says one big thing that would help the unaffordability issue in the housing market, if the salaries could catch up, yes, or get closer to the rate of inflation, that would solve a few problems. You are 100% on nail on the head, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle. It's not just inventory. It's not just mortgage rates. It's the cost of living. It's the salary. The salaries have not kept up because I mean, you see the home prices. If we actually, so this is, oh, wrong. Oh gosh, here we go. There we go. So home prices, how is it that home prices steadily have risen? excuse me, if people couldn't afford to buy these homes, there wouldn't be so many homes that have sold. And the reason is income continually rises. Part of the reason why this huge spike, the baby boomer generation, because they bought their homes 60s, 70s, accumulated equity, excuse me, paid down their mortgage when the incomes allowed you to do that. Pay down the mortgage, refinance to a 15-year, pay it off early. Now they're sitting on a boatload of equity. Pull the equity out, buy cash. That was one of the things that was happening. That helped drive this. Is a ton, and I mean, it's in the trillions on how much home equity is in the United States right now. That is what's driven. But what about the guy or gal that doesn't have all that home equity? And income needs to catch up. And that's why I think that a crash, any drastic changes in the housing market right now is not what we need. We need a slow settling. We need those prices to just even out, chill out, slow down, and then at the same time, let income catch up. It's like you're running a race. The guys at the front of the pack need to slow their roll. Let the little guy catch up. So you guys are all running together. That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen. But who do I? I'm just some real estate agent doing on a YouTube channel. What do I know? What do I know? Miss H says, QQ, what is the longest time a home buyer can get and hold on a pre-approval letter? Oh, great question. If or when there is a crash, wouldn't that make a huge difference? So the pre-approval letters usually are going to be about 60 days, sometimes 90 days, and typically with those pre-approval letters, it's very easy to renew those to get reapproved. Usually they'll just ask for, your latest pay stub. They want to make sure that, you haven't, lost your job or, that type of thing. It's not hard to get reapproved. I mean, will it make if there's a crash, won't that make a huge difference? I don't think in terms of the crash. I don't think so. I mean, obviously, if your financial situation changes, then it doesn't matter if there's a crash or not, because they're going to it's all subject to re-verification on all of your financial documents. If you lose your job, if you get demoted, you change jobs to a lesser paying job, they check that. A pre-approval, pre-qualification or a pre-approval on a mortgage is not a guarantee for the mortgage. Just because if you're a seller and you get an offer and it has a pre-approval, that does not mean the buyer is absolutely guaranteed to get that mortgage. I've heard that more times than not from home sellers that say, well, what do you mean there's a mortgage approval? They have a pre-approval. It means that the lender did a preliminary check, and hopefully they did a hard credit check, a hard doc check. In other words, they physically checked the W-2s. They actually pulled a credit and looked at what they have for their FICO scores, their debt to income ratios. They did everything they could, like go up to the line, and then that line is dependent on property, and you can't cross that line until you find a property. But you can get to that point. If your pre-approval is based, or pre-qualification is based on the information that you verbally provided to the lender, it's meaningless. And as a listing agent, what I will always do is, before my seller accepts that offer, I want to have a conversation. Honestly, I try to sometimes do it, via phone. I prefer via email, because then I have a record of the conversation. In this day and age, that means everything. But I ask them, are there any conditions that I need to know about? Like, is the buyer subject to selling a house and the agent doesn't bother to tell me, which has happened to me. I discovered that changes things a bit. How close are they? Now they can't give you financial information, but they can tell you how solid that pre-approval is. But there's a lot of things, but I don't think it makes a huge difference when it comes to a crash. It's more going to be dependent on what your personal finances are. Hope that helps. Cindy says, can't remember which video, but the article you mentioned how the pandemic DIY boom hammered home equity and lumber stocks. I think you showed a chart, major trends driving lumber prices over 20 years. That is entirely possible. 3 major companies that were holding back lumber. Yeah, you know what? My brain, I cannot recall that information, and forgive me because sometimes these live streams they bleed week to week. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. I wish I could recall that information off the top of my head. I apologize. Angie says that so in the long run, do you think it'll be more of a stagflation where prices stay steady instead of going up? Depends. Yeah, I think it's going to depend on where you are. I don't think that that we'll get to a point that it'll be once things balance out a little bit more. I think there's going to be areas that are going to appreciate and won't stop appreciating. I mean, I know you're in California, I'm in Massachusetts, and then the New England areas, typically. And actually, I have a. Where is that graph? Yeah, so I'm going to show you this graph actually real quick because, and this impacts home prices. So this is a Mortgage News Daily in their data existing home sales across the country, but then broken down into areas, which I thought was interesting. So this is since 2008 till July. Keeping in mind that, and I've mentioned this before, but every, data crunching is always done in arrears in history. So, for example, the numbers for September won't come out until later in October. A lot of this data that I have is for August because we don't have the September data yet. But this graph, and what I thought was interesting is that if you have, the more inventory you have, the more the tables kind of, the seesaw balances out, and the more balanced playing field you have between the buyer and the seller, which means the prices are going to balance out as well. You might have some depreciation, and you might have, no appreciation whatsoever, flat or depreciation. But you'll see in the Northeast, this light blue is the smallest amount, 590,000. Well, this was back in July of 2008, but you look at the amount of, you look at just total area for the blue, and it's consistent for how much of the inventory, the home sales compared to the national average, the demand is there. Demand has always been there. We had, we suffered during the great financial crisis. Properties in our, we had I watched it drop 30%, and it felt like it was overnight. It was just about, it was quick. But that was the banking industry imploding. It was entirely different circumstance, entirely different set of circumstances. This is going to be way more gradual. And so do I see that stagflation? I think it's going to be, I think it's, it's hard when you see data that is on the national level, you've got a combination of all of these different areas evening out, and it doesn't give you the true measure. And like I always say, you've got to know the data in your area. If you are looking to buy in an area, if you're looking to sell in your area, you need to know. I sat down with a home seller this afternoon, this morning, and went through that data. What are the median days to offer for your town? Median days to offer, median days on the market, median sale price, how many homes are on the market now versus last year. You need to know for your area. Massachusetts, not all areas of Massachusetts are going gangbusters. I live an hour south of the city towards Cape Cod. It is far different than being in the suburbs of the city. Far different than Western Massachusetts. So you've got to know your local areas. And I think some areas are going to continue depreciating that have high inventory. But we shall see. Great question. Just as salaries going up will make some prices go again unless these corporations decide to take a little less profit. This is going to be the I'm going to get my popcorn and watch to see what happens, because we've got and I am not an economist. I don't desire to be one, because it is, oh gosh, there's so many moving parts, right? You have um you have this pull from workers that need more money to survive. The cost of living raises, but at the same time you have these industries that are really, they're struggling. And now, unfortunately, it is what it is. These tariffs are going to hit these industries. And when I got, case in point, I bought my boiler, Wheel McLean, made in America, but parts, of course, some of the parts come from out of the country. So of course I asked my installer, my propane guy. I says, well, is this going to be a problem? He said, no. He says, because there's a stockpile. And he says, there's a lot of the commonly used items that the top sellers are stockpiled. We're seeing that now. That's why we haven't felt the tariffs. That's why a lot of folks are like, oh, tariffs, no big deal, yada, yada, yada. You haven't felt them yet because of the stockpiles. When the stockpiles run dry, if the tariffs are still in effect, we're all going to feel it. And the industries and the corporations are going to feel it. And now the question is do these CEOs, now we come to a moral dilemma, and the thing that makes me just beyond frustration and angry as they're looking down their nose at the peons, the CEOs taking the big checks and not wanting to budge, while the little guy suffers because of the fact, and the consumers suffer because the cost of goods are more expensive. They're not going to increase the wages because the profit margins are lower, but they're not taking a cut. That's just my little rant on the whole thing, but it's going to be interesting to see. And again, I may be off base. We'll see what happens. I'm a real estate agent and a homeowner, and I draw from my experiences. Than that, I'm not an expert in the economy. That's for darn sure. Miss A says, Jen, is it possible for a home buyer to take out some equity in a paid off home to purchase another home? Will a bank slow that, or do you know? Yes, 110% you can do that. So here's the thing: you got to be careful when you do this, though. If you own a home that outright, you don't have a mortgage, or even if you have a small mortgage, you could, if you don't have a mortgage if you want to take an equity loan, and you have, depending upon the value of the home and the amount of the equity, usually they'll let you take 80%, typically 80 to 85% of your equity out in cash. You get that approved. You still have to go through the approval process. It's kind of ridiculous, the hoops that I had to jump through because I'm self-employed to get an equity loan. And I have great credit and all the things. Took a long time to get there, but they made me like, I thought I was gonna have to sign over like my grandchildren or some darn thing, because it was amazing. I said, I kept on saying, I'm like, listen, you have my house as collateral, and I'm not asking for 80%. I was asking for like 20%, like a small amount in the grand scheme of things. Still gonna run you through the hoop. So even if you have equity, if your credit is marginal, you still may not be able to get approved for an equity loan. But if you can absolutely take an equity loan out of your home and take that cash and purchase another home. And then it's a great option to look at if you're looking to sell and buy as your primary residence, and you don't want to be in a situation where you don't want to be forced into selling, and now you're like, where do I go? Because a buyer came out of the woodworks, give you a great price and a great opportunity, and you don't want to pass it up. And you don't want to be forced into buying something or pushed and pressured into buying something that you may not want to buy, but you're nervous and scared because you don't want to be homeless. It takes the pressure out of that whole scenario. You get approved on an equity loan, then you know exactly how much you have to spend. Then you can take your time and then buy that house. Now, when you go to buy that house, buying with cash, you get a little bit more leverage. And let me tell you something, guys, this is super important. When it comes to making an offer cash, it is not, you do not have as much leverage as you might think. Cash is king and all the things, and I've heard it over and over again. I've had my last couple listings, I've had folks that have come forward with cash, and the offers were lower than the asking price, and the house was on the market for 3 days, 4 days. And I'm like, listen, I've got 6 offers. The seller's not going to accept your cash offer just because it's cash and lose money. Why? Because if the buyer has solid financing, at the end of the day, when they belly up to the closing table, the money is still green. It's just a matter of how much risk is there to the seller. And if you have a buyer that has a decent down payment, they're doing a conventional mortgage, yada, yada, solid financials, all the things, not worried about appraisal, again, least amount of risk to a seller, they're not willing to walk away from $10,000, $15,000 just because it's cash. You don't have as much leverage. However, if you're buying in an area that is maybe doesn't have multiple offers, number one, or maybe you have a home that needs a little bit of elbow grease, that is not for everybody. Is it possible? Or maybe you're just competing with other offers and you make a decent offer, but being cash, if it's apples to apples, same price, of course we're going to go with the cash offer. If the amount of the net to the seller is the same, less contingencies. Excuse me. The fewer contingencies, the better. Doing that with the equity loan will allow you to have that cash. And then when you move, you can put your house on the market and sell it. And after you've moved out, it's a good way to go if you can do it. Let's see. So there you go. Teresa says, I've been pre-qualified for a home for a year now, renewed quarterly. There you go. Perfect. We got Paul T in the house. Hello. Karen says, you can get a HELOC. There you go. On current home, use it for down payment on new home. That's right. You don't have to pay out cash outright. You can get down payment if you have a home that is paid off, you can get a mortgage on the second house. Now, even if, say, your intention is to take your equity from your first house, buy your second house outright because you don't want a mortgage. Okay, you can do that. However, the path to doing that doesn't need to be 100% straight where you take the cash out and then make the cash purchase. You could take an equity loan, make a down payment. Maybe it's not quite as much. Maybe you only take 20% equity out of your house and make it as down payment because maybe the price is a little closer. You're not downgrading as much, or maybe you're moving to a little bit more expensive area. So it's going to be, you're going to need every penny you can get. You need that, full 100% of the proceeds in order to make that purchase work. But you can't get 100% out of your equity in order to make the purchase. So you can take you have to qualify, take a small mortgage. Check with your lender if you're going to do that to make sure, read the fine print to find out how long you need to hold that mortgage before you pay it off. Usually it's like 3 months. And then you make the 3 months, you make the payments, sell the house, get the cash, make a lump sum payment on that mortgage. Poof. Yes, you'll have to pay closing costs. You have to pay some mortgage interest. Yes, you have to do that, but the cost of doing that may outweigh the opportunities that it opens up for you. Excuse me. Man, I've got a little coughing tonight. All right, what else you guys got? What else? And he said, I'd be scared to do that. What if my first home didn't sell or take forever, then you're stuck with 2 mortgages. Yeah, if you do 2 mortgages, for sure. You want to make sure okay, so let me back up by saying you're never stuck, because if you have a house to sell, it will sell. It's just a matter of how long. It's not a matter of when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you have a small mortgage on the first house and you're going to take a mortgage on the second house, financially, you can do that. You want to always, always, always have a worst case scenario. Don't just have the best case scenario or get talked into by a real estate agent and get, and fall in love with the best case scenario. You gotta equal the scale. What happens? What happens if all of a sudden the prices in your area tip, and now that house that you're selling is worth a little bit less than you thought because you're chasing the market? You've got to build in some emergency, some breathing room on both sides, and be able to carry both mortgages if that's the case for a certain amount of time. At the end of the day, every single house is saleable. Every house is saleable. It's just a matter of getting the right price. And if you get into a situation where you're like, I can't do this mortgage payment, start chopping the price. Chop, chop, chop until the buyer bites. It will happen. Every single house sells at the right price. Period. No house is unsellable. Even the worst houses are sellable. All right. God, I'm sorry for coughing so much, guys. I got to drink my honey and tea, my tea and honey. I agree with you though, Angie. I very much, it comes down to risk tolerance. You've got to ask yourself what your risk tolerance is. I would not be able to sleep. I'd have a hard time. I'd have to have a nice big cushion because my risk tolerance is very low. So, Maddie says, I was going to try a HELOC as a bridge loan, but there was a penalty. I'm curious about that. Penalty, $500 penalty for the poll keeps interrupting. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why it keeps interrupting you. $500 penalty. So here's the thing: is that what's the $500 penalty for? Number one, for paying off. Maybe you've got to hold the HELOC for. So I mean, Here's the thing: you can pay off the HELOC but not close the HELOC. Right? I mean, you don't have to, a HELOC, home equity line, it's a line of credit. It's not a loan, it's a line of credit. It's like a check, you get a checkbook and the money's just sitting there. I have a HELOC for emergencies. I hope I never use it. It's just sitting there waiting just in case. So that, it should be, if you don't close it, you can just hold it. But the question you have to ask yourself is the $500 worth it to you? And what are you getting in exchange? Are you getting peace of mind? Are you getting the ability to take your time shopping? Are you getting the fact that you're not going to lose out on the house that you took forever? You finally found it. Like, what is it that you're gaining by doing it? And you've got to focus in on that. Let's see. Oh, sorry about that. No notification. Oh, sorry about that. Let's see. Karen says, my loan officer recommended HELOC over bridge loan because the fee was cheaper in the end. I would agree with that. Bridge loans can get very expensive. Very, very expensive. And the rates, I don't know how the rates compare to HELOC, but there's not, the closing costs, I think I paid like $250 in closing costs for HELOC loan. Definitely want to research that. Okay. I wanted to, let's see here. I wanted to, couple different things I wanted to share with you guys real quick about the data is the NAR, and this kind of ties into that past article. Just wanted to show you that some of the data that they shared in that article, that 2.2%, was actually a 0.2% decrease in August, not 2.2% decrease in August. This is Again, because the data is in arrears, this is going to be now for August. The September data will be available in about a little over a week, right around October 23rd, 24th, I believe. But nationally, the national snapshot for August was only a 0.2% decrease in total home sales, okay, month over month, 1.8 increase in sales year over year. The inventory is 1.5 million. Sounds like a lot, but we're not. It needs to be higher. It needs to be higher to get balance in the market. And then the median sale price in August tipped up 2%. But I wanted to share with you. It's one of the things about when I was reading this, and it got me thinking about what um, the broader impact of a crash. And when I say we don't want to crash, I am not speaking from a real estate agent. Like, I'm a homeowner. I'm a homeowner who eventually is going to sell my house because I'm going to downsize. Um, I'm in the same boat as everybody else. And honestly, I have nothing to gain by squelching, any kind of information about crashes. I have nothing to gain. I'm in the Northeast. We'll be okay in that regard. We're insulated. But here's the thing: the reason why I say that is because of the impact, and this is why at the beginning of this live stream, why this, why the Senate, um, why the government is even getting involved in the housing market is how the housing market impacts our overall economy. I pulled this when I was doing my research. I pulled this from the Congress.gov website. Okay, so this is not a Newsweek information or biased information. This is right from the government, right? This is right from the source. It says the housing indirect impact on the economy. I thought this was important. It says the housing market. I'm sorry it's so small, guys. The housing market can play an important role on the broader economy as well, as evidenced by the housing bubble that precipitated the recession of 0709. Housing prices can impact residential investment and therefore affect economic growth. Rising home prices likely encourage additional construction spending to take advantage of higher prices, leading to more robust economic growth. This is what we experienced. The pandemic, yes, prices going up and crazy. There, I can understand why there's so much angst and so much frustration, all the things, but the byproduct is is very definitely overlooked. And the fact is that growth in the housing market did helped create a robust economy that a lot of folks enjoyed. Um, a decline in housing prices is likely due to depress construction spending, leading to more anemic economic growth, not housing growth, economic growth. It says fluctuations in the housing market, particularly housing prices, can have broader effects on the economy through so-called wealth effects. An increase in housing value encourages homeowners to spend more than they do at other times for a variety of reasons, including higher confidence in the economy, increased home equity for home buyers, homeowners to borrow against, just talked about that, and higher rental income if you have rental properties. It says a decrease in prices results in the opposite. In the United States, consumer spending makes up roughly 70% of the economy. Therefore, changes in housing wealth can result in significant changes in economic growth. This is why we don't want big changes, even though it sounds great. Even though the thought of buying a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house for $150,000 in New England sounds like a dream, the implications would be a nightmare because of this. And I've talked a lot about this in past live streams, is that we think in small terms oftentimes, and sometimes it's hard when you're in that mindset of wanting to buy a house but can't, wanting to sell your house but not being able to get enough money because the house that you want to buy is maybe in a little bit more expensive area, or just outside your reach because you're not making enough money, to achieve that goal. It's hard not to root for a crash because you remember what happened in 07, 08, 09, and how much the prices went down. You say, gosh, if we could just get back to that point, things would be better. The reality of it is it won't be better if the housing market crashes. It will not. Why? Not because of the housing market itself. Yeah, it'd be great to buy a house that's cheaper. It's the trickle effect. Because maybe when your employer isn't making enough money to fund your paycheck, they let you go because the economy is crashing. Why? Because it's the wealth effect. The housing market isn't generating as much spending. Home Depot and Lowe's and big box stores and the plumbing supply depots and contractors and tradesmen, all those people that get called when a house is sold because it needs work, because homeowners do improvements and all the things, that stops. It stops. When the housing market crashed, nobody was fixing up their house. They were just trying to survive. And that hurts businesses and in turn hurts employees. And I wanted to just give you that insight to think about, when you're looking at the broad, scope of things, a more gentle landing will prevent that from being so disruptive to our economy. This is why, one of the reasons why we're not seeing broad changes, and I don't think we will see broad changes, fast changes, because it can be dangerous. Let's see, but that's just my 2 cents on the question, on the situation. Yes, and you know what? In California, the same with us. The prices increased here as well. Oh, I already did that one. Here we go. Julie says, my heat pump air conditioner combo has died. Oh no. I plan on selling next year. Would it be worth replacing it? If not, I have to pay someone to take it out, possibly thousands. Sorry, it's off the topic. No. This is a great question. So here's the thing. Julie, where do you live? If you live in the southern states, you're going to lose more than you're going to lose more if you don't replace it. I'm going to venture. I would look at options. I would see if there is a less expensive option. I mean, if you live in the Northeast, not everybody has air conditioning up here. You can, if you live, on the north quadrant of the, of the United States, how does that relate to where you live? Because if you live in an area like Arizona, is just getting out of the hundreds and all the things, if you have a broken AC, it's gonna, a buyer is going to look at that and say, well, I know it's gonna be X amount of dollars to replace it, but we want compensation for the fact that we have to replace it. So it may cost 10,000, just pull a number out of the air, 10,000. They may ask for more. Number one. Number two thing I want you to consider, this is my opinion, not based on fact. I don't think these tariffs are going away. And because of the backstock that we have in this country of supply, we haven't felt it yet. That is going to end. And when we have to bring in parts, and you know what? Made in America, yeah, made in America, guess what? Parts will still come from outside the country. Nothing. My Toyota, which is made in America, there are absolutely parts on that Toyota that are not made in the United States. And that is going to cost everybody more money. It's going to cost you more money. So that is why the cost of everything has gone skyrocket. A new air conditioner a year from now is going to be more expensive. If you can afford it, or maybe you can't, then that's going to help. That's going to dictate what you do. But I would do some homework. Okay, you're in Vermont. I wouldn't replace. I'm not in Vermont. I'm not an agent up there. My outside looking in, I would say don't replace it in Vermont. That's a luxury item. That is a luxury item. So, I'm looking for, okay. Sorry, you know what? When you guys are in the chat, I can't put two pieces. If you've asked for a referral, like I don't know what your YouTube handle is, so yeah. They crisscross, and I don't know who I'm talking is. I don't know who I'm talking to half the time, but yeah, I would say chew on it. Chew on it and see what homes are selling in your area to see if it's worthwhile. And the other thing too is that if you're looking to sell next year, we're heading into winter. You're not going to use it. I mean, you're probably going to have limited enjoyment out of it. So and it's probably going to cost you an arm and a leg being up in New England. Let's see. Angie says it was rough for most of us to buy our first home. I remember going through the grocery store, the calculator, making sure I wasn't going over. You know what, Angie? Thank you for saying that, because I have two kids, two daughters, 18 and 23. My older daughter just moved into her first apartment with her longtime boyfriend. So, but it's all, scary and venturing into the world of adulthood. It's always going to be scary. It's always going to be tight. My $300 apartment, 300 square foot apartment that I moved into with my boyfriend. I was dating my husband. I was scared to death. Oh my God, how are we gonna be able to afford this? When we bought our first venture into homeownership was a townhome, and I think condos and townhomes are great first steps because they're more affordable, less expensive. It was $80,000. $80,000, the drop in the bucket. It was a huge, scary venture for us. It's you know what? Every step is a little bit nerve-wracking. Now, once you get into the rhythm of things, you kind of get used to it. It becomes a little bit more. It does get a little easier in terms of the process. But I tell my I tell my kids life advice, not housing market show advice, but life advice. I said, you know what, guys? Life life is good, but life is not easy. It will never be easy. And the best thing you can do on any given situation is, instead of trying to swim upstream, you got to embrace the suck. You got to embrace this. What do I mean? You got to, it's if a tough situation, don't try to fight it. Embrace it. Embrace it. Be like, okay, this is what we got to do, and maybe I got to wait. Maybe we got to tighten our belts, and we got to eat macaroni and cheese and all the things. You got to embrace it. You got to embrace it with open arms. It's not easy, but man, when you stop fighting the current and you just kind of embrace it, go with the flow. I'm telling you, life gets a little bit more manageable that way. Michael X says, Julie, heat pumps and air conditioners start to go on sale at the end of October. That's great advice right there. Or at least in Arizona, check your area because they want to get rid of their summer inventory. Michael, great advice. Great advice. All right, let's check out the poll here. See what's happening. Okay, in the current, we got 81 votes. In the current housing crisis, who deserves first priority in housing policies? Now, of course, this is subjective, but you know what? This is an opinion poll. This is an opinion poll based on, you guys, jumping in and all the things. And we've got renters at the risk of eviction. 21% of you said that the renters should get the first priority. 21% also said the first-time home buyers. Low-income families, 17%, and middle-income squeezed workers, 41%. That speaks volumes. That speaks volumes. Why? Because I think that there is, in my opinion, there is a spotlight on when you think affordable housing. What do you think of? Low income, Section 8, first-time home buyers, entry level. That is what you call not affordable housing, subsidized housing. I'm just talking about affordable housing in general. When you think of when people say, well, who's struggling the most? Well, of course, it's the people just, it's the young buyers just starting out, because they don't have their foot in the door. That is not the case. Why? Because wages haven't been keeping up. with the economy, with inflation. And now you have this whole segment of middle class. I'm Gen X. And let me tell you something, Gen Xers are struggling. We are that middle, we're living in a lot of us, that's where we're at. We're living in that middle section. Families, kids, not enough retirement. We're going to be working a long time, but yet we want to continually better our situation. We want to upscale, downscale, whatever. A lot of my friends, in our generation, with aging parents that are not going into nursing homes, they're not going to retirement houses, but they don't want to own and be in the big family home by themselves. Maybe their spouse passed. So what are they doing? Cohabitating. They're moving home. In-laws, sometimes not in-laws, all the things, cohabitating. And what happens when you do that? Sometimes they bring money, sometimes they don't. So I think this poll tells a lot about, well, of course it's, reflective of the people that are in the chat and whatnot, but I think it goes to show who's struggling, out there and puts a spotlight on it. But hey, thanks so much for you guys showing up today. I really appreciate it. I had some questions I was going to get to, and you know what? It's already 7:21. I have taken up enough of your time. I appreciate you guys sharing your valuable Tuesday evening. Tuesday evening here on the East Coast. I know it's a little earlier there on the West Coast, but I really appreciate there are a lot of real estate YouTubers on the platform, and you're sharing your time with me, and that is not lost on me, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that. But onward and upward, as they say. Guys, have a great week. I'll be back next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, Tuesday 6 p.m. But in the meantime, you know what? Check in on your neighbor. Be kind, be patient, and you guys know my regulars, you know what I'm going to say next. If you don't see eye to eye with someone, if you disagree with someone, doesn't matter if it's someone on YouTube or someone you see in the grocery store or one of your friends, before you judge, seek to understand. Before you judge, seek to understand. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to agree with their thoughts and their opinions. But if you have an understanding, you develop empathy, and you know what, guys, that's a much happier place, a nicer world to live in, that we can just get along and respect the fact that we don't have to all think the same. It's kind of encouraged, actually, because that's where creativity and great things happen. You guys have an awesome evening and rest of the week, and I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Be good.